In the land between two rivers, ancient peoples carved canals and built the foundations of civilization. Legend says that a child abandoned in a reed basket was carried by the river to an unlikely destiny. Raised among commoners in Kish, the boy who would be king began as a servant and cupbearer. As cupbearer to the king, Sargon learned the ways of power at the very heart of authority. But Sargon's gaze reached beyond service. He dreamed of uniting the land under one rule. In an age of rival city-states, armies clashed endlessly over land and water. Whispers spread through Kish. Sargon was gathering loyal men to challenge the old order. From servant to rebel, Sargon struck his first blow in the march toward empire. Legend tells of an infant cast upon the waters carried by the river toward his destiny. Raised by a humble gardener, the boy grew far from royal courts, yet close to the land of Mesopotamia. In bustling Kish, the boy labored among commoners, learning the rhythm of city life. As cupbearer, Sargon gained entry into the heart of power, learning courtly secrets. Among hardened soldiers, Sargon mastered the arts of war and discipline. Yet his vision stretched far beyond Kish. He dreamed of conquest and unity. In shadowed alleys, whispers grew. Sargon was gathering men to defy the old order. With fire and steel, Sargon struck down the king of Kish and seized the city for himself. The fall of Kish marked the birth of a new power, Sargon of Akkad. With Kish secured, Sargon marched on, ready to challenge every city of Sumer. First, Sargon turned his armies against mighty Uruk, jewel of Sumer. Through siege and blood, the walls of Uruk trembled before Akkad. Uruk fell, and with it the balance of power began to shift. From Uruk, the conqueror pressed south to the ancient city of Ur. At Ur, fierce resistance met the Akkadian advance, but Sargon would not be denied. Ur too bent the knee, and Akkad's banner flew where once the moon god reigned. At Lagash, yet another proud city prepared to test Akkad's resolve. Spears shattered and shields splintered as Akkad and Lagash met in furious combat. Lagash fell, and the dream of one man began to take the shape of empire. From Kish to Uruk-Ur to Lagash, Sargon's victories forged the first true empire in history. On the banks of the great rivers, Sargon ordered a new city to rise, Akkad, capital of his empire. Brick by brick, the foundations of Akkad rose from the soil of Mesopotamia. At its heart stood the king's palace, a symbol of Akkad's unshakable authority. From its gates poured merchants, craftsmen, and farmers. Akkad pulsed as the empire's heart. Here Sargon forged the world's first standing army, bound to the state, not to city lords. Akkad's longbowmen could pierce armor from afar, disciplined and deadly. Spearmen formed Akkad's unbreakable wall, advancing as one body across the field. For the first time, chariots thundered as the spearhead of empire. In Akkad's forges, bronze became the empire's teeth and claws. Discipline, order, and constant readiness defined Akkad's warriors. Under one banner, Akkad's armies marched loyal only to the king. From Akkad, Sargon commanded not just a city, but the first true empire. From Akkad's gates, caravans set forth across deserts and mountains. Down the rivers flowed grain, oil, and wool, Akkad's lifeblood of trade. From Lebanon's forests came cedar prized for palaces and ships. From Anatolia came tin, alloyed with copper to forge bronze. From the Gulf came shells and pearls, treasures carried to Akkad's markets. Even from the Indus came merchants bringing beads, ivory, and spice. Akkad's markets overflowed with goods from every corner of the known world. In Akkad, scribes wrote in both Sumerian and Akkadian bridging tongues. Two languages lived side by side, one sacred, one imperial. From youth, children learned the signs of empire binding many peoples with one script. Akkadian became the tongue of diplomacy, the lingua franca of empires to come. From rivers to mountains, Akkad united peoples, trade, and tongues beneath one crown. Grandson of Sargon Naram-Sin, inherited not only the crown, but the ambition of empire. He declared himself king of the 4 quarters of the world, lord over all lands beneath the Sunday. Under Naram-Sin, the empire stretched west into the mountains of Syria. To the east, his chariots thundered into Iran, securing mountains and mines. Tribute poured in timber, copper, lapis, and stone from distant lands. From the mountains of Iran to the coasts of the Mediterranean, his reach was unmatched. Yet not all bent the knee. The fierce lullaby of the Zagros rose against him. On the mountainsides, Akkad met the Lullaby in brutal combat. With divine fury, Naram-Sin drove his men up the rocky heights. His triumph was carved forever on the victory stele of Naram-Sin. Here art served power, proclaiming the king as more than mortal. Naram-Sin was the first to claim divinity, naming himself a living god. For the first time, subjects worshipped a man as both king and god. He paraded as a god-king, draped in symbols of both heaven and earth. Temples rose not only for the gods, but for the god-king himself. Under his banner, Akkad stood at the height of its power. His council plotted campaigns that reached farther than Sargon ever dreamed. From city to city, the banners of Naram-Sin proclaimed Akkad's dominion. Art flourished, glorifying the ruler as both conqueror and divine. Citizens walked beneath stone gazes of their divine king, both proud and fearful. In ritual and stone, Naram-Sin was enshrined among the gods. Carved in stone, he rose taller than men crowned with the stars of heaven. Never before had one ruler commanded such vast lands across Mesopotamia. Naram-Sin, king of the 4 quarters, declared himself eternal god among men. Barley fields stretched across Mesopotamia, feeding the empire's millions. Canals turned desert soil into life, sustaining Akkad's growth. At harvest, entire families worked together to gather the golden grain. Vast granaries secured food for armies and citizens alike. Sheep and goats gave wool, meat, and milk, vital to Akkad's economy. Bread and beer staples of Akkadian life came from barley's bounty. From Lebanon came cedar prized for temples, ships, and palaces. From Anatolia, tin alloyed with copper gave Akkad its bronze. Akkad's markets thrived with goods from distant Indus and Levant. Silver became the measure of trade exchanged for grain and timber. Artisans carved cylinder seals, rolling their marks across wet clay. Each seal bore identity, securing contracts and decrees. On clay tablets, scribes pressed wedges, the birth of writing. Stelae proclaimed laws and victories carved in enduring stone. Akkad's artisans shaped copper, ivory, and stone into beauty and utility. Seals carried the authority of Akkad across its vast dominion. Enheduanna, daughter of Sargon, served as high priestess of Her hymns to the goddess Inanna became the world's first signed literature. Through her words, God spoke, and the people listened. Enheduanna's voice endures the first author in history to sign her name. After Naram-Sin, the empire stood leaderless, its throne uncertain. Civil strife tore through Akkad as rival factions fought for power. Sumerian cities, once subdued, now rose in revolt against Akkad. The once mighty army now strained under endless rebellions. From the Zagros descended the Gutian's fierce raiders seeking plunder. On the plains, Akkad fought to hold back the Gutian tide. Ambushed in the hills, Akkad's weary soldiers broke and fled. Authority crumbled as governors turned against one another. Then came drought, the rivers shrank, the fields withered. Canals dried and cracked lifeblood of the empire drained away. Famine stalked the land, bread and beer vanished from tables. Finally, the Gutians stormed Akkad, seizing its broken gates. The great palace of Sargon's line was consumed by fire. Temples were desecrated. The gods themselves struck down. Survivors fled into the countryside, carrying only what they could hold. The streets of Akkad lie empty, smoke rising from ruins. By 2154 BCE, the Akkadian Empire had collapsed. With Akkad gone, the cities of Sumer rose again to prominence. Yet Akkad's language endured, written and spoken for centuries after. In time, Babylon would rise, carrying Akkad's legacy into the future. The city of Akkad itself vanished, its ruins lost to time. Though Akkad fell, its story flows forever with the rivers of Mesopotamia. Though its walls crumbled, the idea of empire was born in Akkad. For the first time, one man ruled lands beyond his own city, an empire. The Akkadian model of kingship spread across Mesopotamia. Akkadian became the language of kings and merchants for 1,000 years. Even distant kings spoke through Akkadian, the world's first diplomatic tongue. Legends of Sargon lived on retold across generations. His story inspired echoes from the infant Moses to Cyrus the Great. Later, kings like Cyrus followed the path Sargon first blazed. The city of Akkad vanished, its ruins lost to time. Yet their art, their writing, and their vision endured through the ages. Every empire that followed Babylon, Assyria, Persia, built upon Akkad's design. Assyrian kings carved themselves as towering figures, heirs of Akkad's vision. Babylon grew upon Akkad's foundation of law, trade, and tongue. For a millennium, Akkadian remained the language of kings and scribes. The very idea of empire rule over many peoples was Akkad's gift to history. Akkad was the blueprint every empire since has walked in its shadow. From a child set adrift on the river, legend says, rose Sargon of Akkad. Through conquest and vision, he built the world's first empire. From the mountains of Iran to the shores of the Mediterranean, his banner flew. Yet the city itself has vanished, its stones lost to the earth. but its shadow stretched on beneath Babylon, Assyria, and beyond. Though Akkad fell, it gave the world its blueprint for empire. Though Akkad has vanished without a trace, its spirit flows with the rivers still. Subscribe to explore more forgotten civilizations, each with stories that shaped our world.